Hey yo, what is up FPG fam? Further here and welcome back to another Aether Gazer video. Now in today's video, we're going to be going in depth and breaking down Hades' kit in its entirety so that way you have a better understanding of why people say she's such a top tier DPS and why she stays that way until currently in CN right now. So hopefully after today's video, you have a better understanding of that, get some value from it. I'm going to try and be very precise and to the point so that way I don't waste your time. With that being said, let's go and jump straight into it. Now, the first thing I did want to mention is that it's not just her kit and her skills that make her such a strong damage dealer. It's also other variables we're going to be talking about here in just a moment. Now, the other thing that I have to mention before we actually jump into her skills is that she's of the Olympus Gen Zone. Right now on Global, the Olympus Gen Zone is absolutely cooking with the introduction of Hera and then, of course, Hermes. We also have Arctic Abyss Poseidon and others, and then we're going to be receiving even more in the future with Athena and Oceanus. Olympus Gen Zone is just on fire at the moment, a very strong Gen Zone, meaning that it's not going to be hard to build teams around Hades, and also with Hades comes Oneros, who are their perfect partners. We're going to go more in depth about that here in just a moment. Just know Olympus Gen Zone is very, very good at the moment, especially on Global. So with that being said, we're going to move over to her basic attack. And the simplest way possible to explain this, she's going to be manipulating two puppets. And the one puppet is using claws, which is loose. And the other one is Mint using fists. And they're dealing 443% of shadow damage. Now, if neither of the puppets can be manipulated, she's going to use silk threads instead, and she's going to deal 260% of shadow damage. Now, she does have a passive, and she is a self-divine grace modifier. And when divine grace is between 25 and 75, she's going to obtain one underworld breath mark, and she's going to be able to obtain that every 6 seconds. And every underworld breath mark is going to increase crit rate by 3% and crit damage by 5%. There is very few, if any, modifiers that actually increase crit rate and crit damage naturally within their kit. And when that is the case, that's how you know they're going to be a top tier damage dealer, because of that reason alone, which means you can then build attack as high as possible. And then of course with the main DPS build, you're going to do crit rate and crit damage naturally, so you're going to increase that even more. And then what you're going to notice is that within Hades' kit, crit rate and crit damage increasing is sprinkled throughout. That is why she is such a massive top tier strong DPS, because she's able to do this naturally. Once again, there are very few, if any, that I can think of currently on Global that actually do that. And that is why she's so strong, because she has that naturally built throughout her entire kit. With that being said, with the Divine Grace, Loose, who uses the Claw's basic attack skill, consume 1 Divine Grace, and Mint, who uses Fist basic attack skills, generate 3 Divine Grace. So one is consuming Divine Grace, the other one is generating, and it becomes this mini game of trying to maintain and micromanage your Divine Grace to be in sweet spots, so that way you're getting the most out of whatever you're trying to do in terms of damage. So you have to keep that in mind, and that's where the little nuances of Hades' kit comes into play, and that's why she is what I consider to be a little more technical in that aspect, because you have to micromanage the Divine Grace, so that way you're optimizing how much damage you're doing with this modifier, and you are filling out the full potential with her kit. So now we're going to move over to skill 1, and this is Shadow Dance Twirl. Essentially, she's going to swap between the manipulated puppets when casting the next skill 2 or skill 3. Loose and Mint will both enter accompanying dance state. Now, we're going to go more in depth about the skill 1 here in just a second, but just to take a pause, when they do that, let's move over to skill 2 first. Essentially, it's going to be increasing the damage of skill 2 and skill 3. So when they are in the accompanying dance state for skill 2, when Loose is currently manipulated puppet, is going to deal 900% shadow damage. Remember, that's the claws, and inflict shadow C status on the enemies during the animation, dealing 120% shadow damage every 2 seconds, lasts 12 seconds. So for this one, it's going to last longer but do slightly less damage. When it's Mint is going to be doing 180% damage. But it's going to last a little bit shorter, only for 8 seconds. So you have to keep that in mind. And then when in accompanying dance state, skill 2 will be enhanced, where Loose and Mint will perform a coordinated attack, dealing 1,560% of shadow damage. So essentially, if you pop the skill 2 before popping skill 1, you're going to be doing the manipulated puppets, where if it's Loose, it's 900% with 120% shadow damage in 12 seconds. Or if it's Mint that's manipulated, it's 900% shadow damage, and then you're dealing 180%, and that lasts for 8 seconds. But if you have the accompanying dance state active, meaning you did skill 1 first, then you're going to do the coordinated attack and deal 1,560% of shadow damage. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. Once again, Hades is a little more nuanced, a little more technical than I think people are realizing. Now, with skill 3, you're going to be doing Luce's, if Luce is manipulated, dealing 1000% of shadow damage. If Mint is manipulated, you're doing 1000% shadow damage as well. And then Luce and Mint will slightly pull in surrounding enemies, so there's some CC there during the skill animation, and performing animation cancels will remove this effect. And then once again, if skill 1 is popped, when in the accompanying dance state, skill 3 will be enhanced, where Luce and Mint will perform a coordinated attack, dealing 1440% of shadow damage. So slightly less than skill 2, but once again, it is very similar. So if you have skill 1 popped, you're in that accompanying dance state, then you're going to be enhancing both skill 2 and skill 3's damage, and you're going to be doing a coordinated attack. If it's not popped skill 1, then you're going to be doing what skill 2 and skill 3 does naturally. So you have to keep that in mind when you're using Hades. Skill 1 is extremely important, whether it be for your other skills that you have, skill 2 or skill 3, or just for skill 1 in general. So we're going to go over to skill 1 now. I'm going to move on. So you pop skill 1, and they're going to go ahead and enter the accompanying dance state. Now, when you're in the accompanying dance state, when underworld breath marks are max, which I believe 4 is the max marks that you can have, essentially hold the basic attack. You're going to consume all the underworld breath marks, and essentially you're going to go into what I consider berserk mode. So Luce and Mint will both enter the partner dance state, and this is going to last for 5.5 seconds. Now, in this state, crit rate increases by 12%, crit damage increases by 36%, and fixed damage increased by 6,000 last 9 seconds, dealing 2,000% shadow damage in total. I mean, once again, like I mentioned, this crit rate increase and crit damage increase is sprinkled throughout her kit, but as you can see, even from just the basic attack in skill 1, we're getting massive increase in both departments, massive increase in shadow damage, massive increase in just fixed damage in general. It's just nutty. We're already in nutty territory, and we just gotten through the skills and haven't talked about anything else. It's just insane. Once again, no other modifier is doing what Hades is doing damage wise, and that's why she's so strong, because it's just naturally built within her kit. Now keep in mind, when you're in the partner dance state, skills cannot be used, underworld breath marks cannot be obtained, and divine grace cannot be gained from Luce and Mint's attack. When dodge effect is not on cooldown, when you cast a skill 1, you're going to greatly slow the locked on targets action, lasts for 4 seconds, and then the dodge effect will go on cooldown afterwards. So you're basically in this berserk state that's just insane. You're running rampant, you're doing massive amount of damage. Now the dodge skill is just a natural one. It slows the attacker's action, greatly lasts for 4 seconds, so nothing to really go over there. Now for the ultimate, it's going to deal 1200% of shadow damage, and then you're going to gain an effect where every 3 seconds self divine grace will be reset to 50, last 12 seconds. Now keep in mind, you want to be in between 25 and 75 to obtain the underworld breath mark, so this is fantastic. You're right in the middle, and that's going to last for 12 seconds. Every underworld breath mark possessed will increase the team's crit rate by 3% and crit damage by 15% last 12 seconds. So she even has some slight supporting capabilities there. And then when self or teammates deal crit damage, obtain a set amount of ultimate charge. So that's how you get some ultimate back. So just insane. Now she does have an ultimate skill chain with her, what I would consider best partner, Oneros. And essentially she's going to be doing shadow damage and light damage with Oneros. And then the team gains energy and divine grace regeneration effect, triggering once every 3 seconds, last 12 seconds. Now the very big part about this is that when those two are partnered up, doing the ultimate skill chain increases team's Olympus modifiers damage dealt by 60%, lasts for 12 seconds. That is just incredibly nutty. And you're going to understand the reasons why, not only for Hades, but the reason why it's so nutty is because Hades is probably going to be in a full Olympus team. That's going to be her best team to run her in. So everybody's getting a massive increase. It's just insane. It's absolutely insane. It's just crazy. Now, if we move over to her Aether codes, no matter which one that you choose, I think they're all insane. Her yellow is just increasing crit rate and crit damage even further. It's reducing shatter resistance and increasing defense. It's just the yellow Aether code seems pretty insane in terms of that. And then the red one is probably going to be the best in terms of DPS for the third one, where if you're in between 40 and 60, Divine Grace, your attack is increased by 24%, shadow damage is increased by 24%, and skill damage is increased by 24%. That's just nutty. That's nutty. And then the first one, if you're in between 25 and 75, damage dealt is increased by 12%. You're just getting so much increase, and then you're also getting Underworld Breath Marks, and that's going to be decreased by 1.5 seconds to get it. So the red Aether code is just bonkers, and then the blue one is pretty nice as well. Divine Grace consumption is increased to 4 on Lucis hit, and Divine Grace gain is increased to 12 on Mint's hit, so you're getting a little additional effects there. You're manipulating Divine Grace even more, and then when Divine Grace is 0, shadow damage is increased by 24%. There's just a lot of damage dealing going on within her Aether codes, but like I mentioned, the red one's probably going to be the best for DPS. The yellow one is really nice just in general. This is probably going to be good for the AI slot, like if you're using Hades on the AI, which I don't see the reason why you would, but just in case you are, probably a very good AI, because there's a lot of things that they're just going to be doing automatically that just pops up. So all in all, insane Aether code. And then in terms of the signature functor, not necessary for Hades. That's one of the very good pros for this modifier. You don't need the signature functor for, but if you do obtain it, it's only going to enhance her damage even further. Now, like I mentioned, it's not just Hades herself that makes her such a strong damage dealer. You can see within her kit, it's just nutty, right? And there's a lot of things going on there, but it's the team that you're putting her with that is going to make her insane. And that's what makes her such a top tier DPS, in my opinion. So you couple everything we just talked about with her kit, and then you pair her with somebody like Hera, for example. Hera is one of the best partners that you're going to be able to put with her because of the gen zone is Olympus, so you're getting that benefit. You're also getting the benefit of Hera being able to trigger her own 0 time, which is phenomenal. But then, of course, we all know that Hera buffs the damage or the attack of your main DPS, and that is within the skill 2, which is going to be by 20.5%. Max is 40%, and that lasts for 15 seconds. So you take everything we just talked about within Hades' kit, and then you give her an additional attack increase. It's just absolutely absurd. And then the ultimate, of course, team damage dealt increased by 14.4%, max 30%, and that lasts for 12 seconds. Refunds the combat resources for the next skill cast within 10 seconds for the team. Hera is just a phenomenal partner for Hades. And then if you're using the support Aether code path, which if I'm not mistaken is the blue path, in combat skills 2 cooldown is decreased by 5 seconds, so you're doing the Dawn Wish even more. And then you have the second one, skill 2 will no longer target self, so you're going to be targeting the main DPS, and the self attack increases by 25%, so you're getting an additional attack increase. And then skill 2 selected target attack will be further boosted by the equivalent of 25% of self attack, lasts for 15 seconds. It's just insane, right? You can already see it's getting crazy. I mean, it was already crazy with Hades' kit. It's getting even more crazy with Hera. Now we pair her with the A rank modifier that's going to be coming alongside her, which is Oneros. And if you pair her with Oneros, things are just now obscene at this point. It's absolutely obscene because Oneros is doing so much. Oneros is able to imprison, and she's up the Olympus gen zone once again, so you're getting the extra benefit of that. She's able to do imprison. She's able to, if I'm not mistaken, decrease damage taken. She's also able to do some pseudo healing as well, which is just crazy. She has tons of utility. And then with the ultimate skill chain that we just talked about, she's increasing the Olympus modifier's damage dealt by 60%, which is just insane. And then if we take a look at her yellow skill Aether code, if we take a look at the second one, when skill 1 hits enemies with skills 2 field, decreases their light and shadow resistance by 25%, lasts for 10 seconds. We just talked about Hades being paired with Hera, who's a light modifier. So we're allowing Hera to hit even more, which DPS Hera is the thing. She does some pretty good damage. And now we have Hades for the shadow resistance reduced by 25% as well. It's just nutty. Now you start to pair everything together, and then you start to see why she is such a strong damage dealer, because it's not only her kit, it's also the partners that you put her with, the teammates, right? The teammates that you have with her, Oneros being a perfect partner, Hera being a perfect partner, and now you're synergizing everything. You have Hera, who's increasing attack and is able to proc 0 time naturally whenever she wants, with the conditions, of course. Then you have the Olympus Gen Zone increasing modified mode. You have the ultimate skill chain here, increasing Olympus damage dealt. You have Hades boosting her own crit rate and crit damage naturally. You have shadow resistance, a light resistance shred here. You have imprison. You have reduced damage taken. So much happening. So much happening, and this is why she is such a very strong DPS, Hades, is because her kit is insane and her partners or teammates are insane. I find it hard pressed to find another modifier that has such ideal teammates like Hades does. I know there are some out there, like for example, we have Aether that goes with A-Shu, excuse me, not S-Shu, A-Shu. Obviously Aether with Thor at some point in time. There are others as well, Hermes and Hera with anybody essentially, right? Scotty with Vidar. Like, there are a lot of good teammates, but there's not too many like good full-blown teams where all three modifiers or two modifiers are just perfect partners for one main DPS modifier. That's hard to find, and Hades has it, and Hades is already a strong natural DPS on her own, so you could just see why she's so strong, and why she stays that way for quite some time. But anyways, I hope this video was helpful. I know it was a bit long, but it's just a lot to go over. She's a very technical modifier, and she has a lot of nuance within her kit, and it takes some understanding, but once you get the idea of her kit and you go a little in depth, you get to see very clearly why she's so strong. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and get on out of here, guys. I hope this was value to you, and hopefully you got some good information. I'm gonna leave you with that. Remember to stand out, be different, have fun, go further beyond in everything that you do. My name is Cody, and you call me further. I'll see you all next one. Bye, guys.